Hey, this is Demetrius Alekos for Wisconsin NPC and Fox Cities Showdown, an old G shirt. In any event, today's topic I want to talk about is judging. A lot of people are unfamiliar with and how a show is judged. So I'm just going to briefly go over that so you can understand from an athlete's perspective what's going on in front of you. Besides the head judge calling out the poses, shuffling people around, and what that all means in the long run, what you have to look forward to, what to think about that, just to give you some peace of mind and make you even more comfortable with the day of the show so you have a better understanding of what's going on. So at the NPC, there is shows that are not nationally qualified, and then there are shows that are nationally qualified. And the main difference between that is non-nationally qualified, there's 5 judges. Nationally qualified shows, there's 7 judges. And the nationally qualified shows, if you place in the top 2, you can enter different shows at the national level that qualifies you in the top 2. In the past couple of years, it was the top 5. And what they did there is they were trying to populate both the women's physique and the classic physique ranks so that there were more than 5 people at a national qualifying show. So now we've gone back to the top 2 in each class. Now, when you are scoring, I'm going to show you a score sheet from last year. And some of them look a little different from state to state, and that's fine. So this is an actual score sheet with the names on it and then the placing, as you can see here, and then there's a place for notes for the judges. So what you'll see here is you'll basically give each contestant a score of 1 through whatever. If there's 8 people, you will score those people 1 through 8. Now, one of the ways that, as a judge, I can tell you this is how I score first. I know this is blank paper, but until recently I was going through some files and I threw away a bunch of the sheets that I used at a couple of different shows, both in Wisconsin and in Indiana. And so I make my notes. I watch as the show progresses between the classes. As we move people around, I may get a different perspective, whether they move from the left-hand side, center, right-hand side of the stage. And there has been times when I've made some self-corrections so that by the time this paper comes next to me, I can transfer all the proper information. And it also helps as a judge to move on. So when you have people that are crossing over from one division to the next, you can kind of see where you place them. There have been a few times in the past where the novice division was exactly a mirror image of the open division. And since they're back to back, there's not going to be much difference in the placings, even with some of the masters, the teen divisions, the open divisions, because they run consecutively. It's always good to have those notes as a judge so you can make sure that A, you didn't make any mistakes, B, you can be consistent, and C, if you do see something different as the show goes on, you can make those corrections and look back at your notes. Okay, aside from that, sometimes there's a tie. Now, before I get into the tie, I'm looking at my notes. It says, with judging, you throw out the high and the low score. So if there's a high score of 1 and a low score of, let's say, if there's 7 people in the division, then you throw out the high and the low score, just like the Olympics. If you ever watch the Olympics, they show the scores at the bottom of the screen, and they show out the ones that they cut off, and then the average of those remaining scores. So obviously, national qualifying show, you're looking at 7 scores. The high, the low gets shot out, and then you have the average of the 5 scores that are left over. In the event of a tie, and it does happen very rarely, but it does happen. In the event of a tie, the person who has the most lowest, which are the highest scores, that would be the person that wins that tie. So if a person had 3 1s and 2 2s, and the other person had 3 2s and 2 1s, the person with the most 1s, first place votes, would break that tie. That's how that's determined. Now, as a judge, from doing this, I don't even remember how many years, I can tell you for a fact, the way that I judge, the way we judge in Wisconsin, and the way I've typically seen judging done, typically, I'm not going to say always, again, the judges have the best seats. I've been at shows where I've been in the 20th row. The 20th row is not where the judges are sitting, okay? So there is a grain of salt you have to take into effect. I judge from the neck down. That's it. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you've been my best friend for 20 to 25 years. That might be your disadvantage. I might expect more from you, but I'm just telling you, from the neck down, that's how I judge people. And that's how we expect everybody to judge when we are in Wisconsin at any one of our shows. In the past, I would let the scorekeeper, Ashley, who's our fantastic scorekeeper here in Wisconsin, I tried to be as impartial as I could. I didn't want to see the scores. Doesn't matter to me. Well, that's changed because it's a learning tool. Now, that also, checks for accuracy. Here's the show from last year. You can see how everything's crossed out, double checked, signed off to make sure that all the scores were as accurate as possible. And we have a computer program to make sure that. So besides the computer program figuring everything out, we go through it by hand. That's what happens between prejudging and the night show to make sure that everything is perfect. There's nothing left to chance, nothing whatsoever. We do not need to be embarrassed as judges to say that if we got something wrong, that was obviously wrong. There have been times when I've been at shows where whatever happened, the placings didn't come up right, stop the show, take a look at it, figure it out. That way everything goes exactly the way it should be and as smooth as possible. So like I said, from a judging perspective, you basically judge 1 through 8. If there's 8 people in a show, we take a lot of notes, not only to help those athletes after the show if they have questions about their placings, maybe something they could have did better, whether it was their tanning, whether it was their color, whether it was their posing. Sometimes they fidget on stage. These are all things that a judge can see. I had a gentleman come up to me in Indiana, and he had a tick on stage that he had no idea that he was doing. He had no idea. And he was consistent. He was doing it the entire time he was up on stage. And then some months later, I saw him at another show, and I was happy to see him again. We talked, and I said, "You don't do that anymore," because he had it in his mind. He didn't even know he was doing it. So these are things that you can learn from the judges after you talk to them at the end of the day. Okay, I talked about judging from the neck down. I talked about impartiality. I talked about 5 versus 7 judges throwing out the high and the low. And then, of course, the things that can have an impact. A lot of girls have asked me in the past, how does my hair and makeup look? How does my hair and makeup look? Here's the thing with hair and makeup. It's supposed to look good, right? The only time I've ever looked at a girl's hair and makeup is when it did not look like it was supposed to. And what I mean by that is that it was completely unkept, undone, a distraction, maybe, if you will, because it was so undone. I would probably never, ever judge somebody lower unless if it was this close. I mean, if it could have been neck and neck, and obviously you've seen one person took the time and effort to have everything good the way it's supposed to be from head to toe, that would probably be the only time that I would look at that and cause a markdown. As far as tattoos, I get a lot of questions about tattoos. They don't ever bother me. I've never, ever scored anybody down because of tattoos. They've never, ever obscured the definition or the muscularity, at least in my eyes. If you're in shape, you aren't going to hide anything. I mean, realistically, when you think about how white you are before you get the tanning and then how dark you are from you get the tanning, again, they've never obscured my vision to the point where it made it difficult for me to make any decision judging, regardless of what division you were in. So I hope this let some insight on how the shows are judged, what we go through, some of the things that we do as far as scoring, making sure there's accuracy issues or no accuracy issues whatsoever. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to contact me on Facebook, Demetrius Alekos, Instagram, Demetrius Alekos, or the Fox Cities Showdown pages. Here I am. Got any questions, just let me know. Fox Cities in just under 12 weeks. Thanks.